Hello again, guys! So now it's time to check out my top 9 favorite books of this year. And so starting off this part of the list is The Taking by Kimberly Durting, and it's tied with its sequel, The Replaced. You know, honestly, this top 15, it's more like a top 18 because of some of the ties I give it, but when they're of a series, well, I guess it doesn't matter, but basically, in short, The Taking is about a girl who decides to get out of her father's car after they have an argument about college, and then the next thing this girl, Kira, knows, she's, well, swept away on this white light, and she wakes up the next day to find out she actually missed 5 years of her life. Now, there's a book that I really hated this year that had a very similar element of mystery, and I hated it because it didn't really answer the question, and the character made a very bad choice. I wanted the character to make a different choice, and that was basically why I stayed with the whole book. Well, actually, I read pretty much every book I read till the end, but yeah, it was pretty painful in that book. The Taking really fixes that. It was the book I really wanted from that one. The first half is kind of like a very good character study of what it means when you lose all that time, and, well, just how people can feel when you're gone, and just how you feel when all the friends you have left you. And just, I felt so bad for Kira, and the next half is a roller coaster ride that balances drama and action and mystery and questions just perfectly. And I really ship the romance in this series. I really do, and I wasn't expecting it to. You know, I was worried to start The Replaced because, well, there have been series like The Maze Runner and Ruby Red and Silo, where the first book was incredible, but then the next books made it feel like I gave it too high a grade. It seems like The Taking is not going to be one of those series. And The Replaced has a twist up that really, well, I just never saw coming. And I can't wait till the countdown, which is the name of the last book in the series. Kimberly Durting is a master storyteller who has crafted 2 masterful books. Now coming in at number 8 is Guardian by Alex London. You know, I have Proxy up in my room, maybe I should have gotten it, but anyway, yeah, Proxy is the first book in the duology, Guardian is the last. When I read Proxy, it really took me by surprise and yet didn't. I ended up giving it a 2.5 out of 4, but I've been thinking about it a lot, so I bumped it up to a 3. I wasn't sure if I really wanted to read Guardian that much after the ending of Proxy, which was so tragic and, well, and seemed to conclude everything, but nope, I shouldn't have worried about that. Think of it this way, like a part 4 to the Hunger Games, or part 4 to pretty much every YA trilogy you can think of, one where the enemy is vanquished and everyone is cleaning up, and this is sort of what Guardian is. And I really like that in stories. I like to see what happens after everything the characters are fighting for is finished. And I know that usually after the boss battle, the authors might expect everyone to just be happy and cool and just glad they read it, but no, not for me. I like to know what happens after all the battles, and a lot of books don't usually do that, but Guardian does so. To be fair, I wish that Alex London had explained Nox in a bit brighter of a way than he was. Like, he said that maybe Nox didn't really love Sid like he was just being Nox when he kissed him, but no, I don't really see it that way. But pretty much everything else to the story, the characters, the twists, the idea, which is pretty much one of the most original ideas of the year, all of those were right on the money. Oh, and especially the LGBT romance. I wasn't expecting to like it, but when Liam is just looking at Sid in admiration through the hospital, it's just pretty impossible not to blush. I really like the two of them, even if their relationship is not taken very far in this book, but oh well. But there's one other LGBT book I like that's coincidentally the next one. Well, maybe it's not coincidentally. I was close to giving these books a tie. And the reason they're this high up was because I was very close to giving them 4 stars. I really was, but just because of one thing or another they weren't, but I still loved them and devoured them. But anyway, coming in at number 7 is One Man Guy by Michael Barakiva. This book really captures what it's like to have a boyfriend and what it's like to be in a very religious family. And I love Alec's outbursts. They're so relatable and they're so funny how far author Michael Barakiva takes them. And well, I think Alec and Ethan are the cutest couple I've read about all year. Let's just say I really learned a lot about Armenians, and I feel like the Armenian genocide should really be something that people learn about in life. And I like that Alec and Ethan aren't the same person, and both of these characters give something to the both of them. And I knew that I was going to love One Man Guy when there was the end of a chapter and I wasn't sure if I was going to like the way it was going. I felt it could only go 2 ways and I knew that there would be bad coming from each of them, but then it kind of split its way up and did something I never expected and just, and it was perfect. It was the best idea possible. I also really like how when Alec and Ethan are together, people say that they're adorable together, and just that's adorable in itself. It's really a joy to read. And Michael Barakiva has promised a standalone companion to this book called Hold My Hand next year, and I can't wait for it. I don't know if it's going to be Alec and Ethan, but I can go for whatever because Michael Barakiva is a great author. Now coming in at number 6 is a book that I related to even more than One Man Guy. Maybe not so much that it's like One Man Guy I didn't relate to, because I related to One Man Guy like the second most out of all the books I read this year. But number 1 for that category and number 6 for my top 10 is No One Else Can Have You by Kathleen Hale. Yeah, I really like this protagonist, Kippy Bushman. I have made mistakes, Kippy's made mistakes. Kippy had an overactive imagination as a kid, I had an overactive imagination as a kid. Kippy's messed up ceremonies, I've messed up ceremonies. When Kippy accidentally, basically ruins the funeral for her murdered friend, which isn't a spoiler because it's a murder mystery on that murder, I didn't know what to feel. I really felt like Kippy had let Ruth down, and I really felt sorry for Kippy and how embarrassed that must be, but I also thought about Ruth's diary. I've had such a mixed feeling about it all that I couldn't, think straight about. So, yeah, this is a murder mystery that doesn't have an overabundance of characters that allows us to really think who is behind that dreadful murder, and the fact that Kippy is not very, very experienced makes it all the more relatable. When she's breaking into this old man's apartment, you feel like that's kind of what you would do. Generally, I think that I would get gadgets or be more smarter than I was, but yeah, for Kippy it feels a lot more ordinary. And so this is kind of a slow book, but it's a good kind of slow because it's very funny, and I really liked the idea of this whole rural town called Friendship, Wisconsin, and the last 100 pages are pretty much perfect. They're pure poetry for literature. They're exciting. They flip the book on its head, and it's kind of infuriating on Kippy's behalf how no one believes her. It's actually very scary, it's very trippy, and just the ending was very joyful. So yeah, Kathleen Hale did a very good job. She made a sequel called Nothing Bad Is Going to Happen, and I didn't find it as good as this one, but overall the 2 books are very good. Now, I don't think Kathleen Hale has said she's going to make a 3rd one yet, but Nothing Bad Is Going to Happen has a sort of cliffhanger, sort of doesn't, but kind of does, and I really want to find out what happens next, so I think that what she should call it if she makes another book is Nowhere Will Work But Here. Just an idea. Now coming in at number 5 is a book that made me kind of rethink my top 15. You remember what my number 10 book is? Well, I almost didn't put it on here because I felt this would spoil what this book is, but I decided to be fair. Number 5 is Morningstar the last book in the Red Rising trilogy, which I have in hardcover and I bought for $33 because I read Red Rising and Golden Sun in hardcover at the library, and I felt like it wouldn't be as magical if I read it in short paperback. I don't know. But, well, yeah, if you thought Red Rising and Golden Sun were good, then Morningstar kind of conquers the entire series, sort of like how Jupiter compares to, well, Mercury. Morningstar goes so many different places, I completely lost count. I love the development between Darrow and Mustang, and not just between those two, but with Darrow and Cassius, Darrow and Severo, Darrow and Roke. I think that anyone who loves Star Wars will adore the Red Rising trilogy. It's very, very long, and there are a lot of words on each page. Essentially, Morningstar might be even longer than Winter, a book that's 800 pages, or maybe they're the same. I guess I'd have to do some word calculation. I read this book in like 6 days. I read Golden Sun in 4 days, I forgot to mention. Just, yeah, even though these books are long, they can be pretty easy to get through. I was very nervous, actually, about the ending, because the ending to me is the most important part of any book. There were these 2 typos throughout the book. I'm not going to spoil what they are because thankfully they didn't actually happen. Phew, because I was so worried that if they did happen, I was gonna have to give this like a 3 or a 2.5. I might have even not recommended it if it ended a way that I didn't want. But yeah, when it did end, like, I had a smile on my face for, well, just like how my hands were shaking at the end of Golden Sun, just I was smiling for hours after reading Morningstar. Now coming in at number 4 is Runaway by Meg Cabot, the last book in her Airhead trilogy. This was actually the first book I read all year. I actually read it on New Year's Eve, and between you and me, well, actually it's not between you and me because this is going to be a public video, but I read it over the course of just 12 hours. It's about 320 pages, but I couldn't stop reading. I devoured it so fast. Yeah, I think the Airhead trilogy is one of the easiest books to get through ever, and I think that will really help kids get into reading overall. But there are books that I've devoured fast that I've given thumbs down to because they don't have a good story, but yeah, Runaway has a very heart-wrenching and heartwarming story at the same time, mostly heart-wrenching. To give you a short analysis of the series, it's about a girl named Emerson Watts. I'm pretty sure it's Eam for short. It's spelled E-M, but anyway, Emerson is killed when a Stark Enterprises TV falls on her at this little get-together for all these celebrities of Stark Enterprises, and she finds herself in the body of a celebrity, Nikki Howard. Now, let me just say straight off the bat that I always cared about Eam and Christopher's relationship, but I read a preview of Runaway that showed Eam and Christopher talking things over, and I was worried that it was going to be too easy after what happened at the end of Being Nikki, which convinced me to read Runaway almost instantly. And phew. Eam and Christopher's little talkhead broke my heart, and then my heart got broken again when Eam talks to her parents about this misunderstanding about her grades and how Eam just wants to be pretty. I couldn't believe what had happened. Meg Cabot knows exactly what gets me emotional. And well, a lot happened in Airhead and Being Nikki, but I wanted Runaway to have a really final punch-up, and wow, did it. And oh, and also, Nikki Howard, yeah, you really are an airhead, but it's very fun to read about how immature you are. Now, to be fair, one of the characters, Gabriel, does a song about Nikki, and the lyrics are kind of simple. I don't think they would sound good on a song, but other than that, well, I loved Runaway, even more than Morningstar somehow. I do know why, but yes, now it's time for the top 3. Now, coming in at number 3 is Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. I wanted to read this first before I saw the movie, so I decided to just sit down and wake up early and see how much I could get through this. It turns out, I think that I got through even more than half of it in less than 2 hours or 3 hours, and those 3 hours were just a joy to have lived through. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children is a masterpiece, and not just because Ransom Riggs seems to have collected the perfect pictures, and as unbelievable as these pictures are, especially the one of the floating girl, unless he was lying to us, which I'm sure he wasn't, all of these pictures are real, and they're so interesting, and they each take up one page. And what I like about that is there are books in life that I can't wait to end. Miss Peregrine is not one of these. But by allowing a picture to take up a whole page, you allow the reader to really feel like they're getting progress done on the book. And it makes the book seem shorter and easier to get through than it might seem like at first glance. And that's a very good strategy, but not only that, there's an amazing story with Jacob and his grandpa, and I liked Jacob and his dad. I didn't expect for this to be a father-son relationship sort of book, and that isn't the main point of it, but I kept thinking about it throughout the book. And why? Why did I not find out who was behind it all before? Why? It was so easy. And not only that, but I love the Peculiar Children. I love Emma, I love Olive, I don't really like Enoch, well, that was sort of the point. I love Fiona, I love Millard, just, all of these superpowers are very neat, and they use them to their full potential throughout the book, and which I wasn't expecting. And just the cliffhanger is terrific. I don't read a lot of books that have a very good big time limit, but thanks to the ending of this book, yeah, Hollow City's going to be a thrill ride, I'm sure. I can't promise I'm going to give it a positive review, but after Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children, there's a very, very, very big chance. And now for number 2, we have a tie. Sort of like how I gave The Taking and the Replaced both the number 9 spot. Coming in at number 2 is the Red Queen series by Victoria Aveyard with Red Queen and Glass Sword. Red Queen has been on my TBR ever since I first saw the cover. So what's one of the first things I think about in Red Queen? Well, I think about how big the world is, how big the world is expanded from just the usual YA book that usually just stays in one place or in one arena. Red Queen and Glass Sword go everywhere and do everything, and it's like Michael Bay has sort of been reborn or something, and Michael Bay is my favorite series of all time right now. And Red Queen has a very interesting take on terrorism. When the Reds attack Silver headquarters to try to get their propaganda, they always attack buildings when no one is around them. I didn't know that at first, and for that it was sort of hard to sympathize with Farley, but then when I found out about that and how there were attacks that looked like they were from Reds, I think it's very hard for your mind not to get blown how intense and how important this book feels. And yeah, you've probably heard that the twist-ups are really twisted, and they really are. I love the betrayal idea. Well, actually, I loathe it. Just in Red Queen and Glass Sword both, there was never a time where I wasn't with the characters, where I wasn't walking along with them, feeling like I was being surrounded, or feeling like I was in a forest full of possibly enemy silvers. And when Mare is under a table, and one of the Reds uses her powers to make it seem like Mare's invisible, yeah, when the guard looks right at her and yet doesn't, well, that was pretty intense. I was actually kind of shaking. I imagined what it must feel like to be in her shoes that way. And some might say that Mare was whiny throughout Glass Sword, and I thought maybe she was a little bit, but at the end of Glass Sword, she does something that's so heroic after this huge tragedy that there's a part in the best book of the year list alongside Red Queen. So okay, now it's time for number 1. Now, for number 1, we have a tie. Now, the first book I'm going to mention is the best book of 2016 overall, part 1, is Shredder by Niall Leonard. Remember Incinerator and Crusher? Well, yeah. This series just gets better and better, and Shredder kicks it off with a big bang. Once again, there's never a moment where you feel like Finn is not in danger, you feel like Finn is in danger everywhere, and this book doesn't really have a mystery this time. Instead, it seems to be a full-on action book, because that was kind of always Niall Leonard's specialty. And this movie depicts racism and terrorism perfectly. It lives in the truth of the world. and of how dangerous London is and how unfair the police are towards people with dark skin. Here's a part where it got very twisted. There's a riot that takes place in this book. And, well, I usually root for the underdog. I almost always root for the underdog. But in this book, I really felt like the rioters were actually kind of bad people. I felt very bad for the police. I felt like they were doing their job, and that doesn't usually happen to me in books that focus on crime. And I was worried that the book's ending would be underwhelming. Nope, it wasn't. And it crushed, burned, and shredded me, well, pun intended, to all of these covers. And the last little sentence was, well, it was encapsulating and so invigorating. It was actually sad. I guess there's no such thing as perfect in an ending like this, or a series like this overall, but there's also, just like Incinerator, there was a car chase that I visualized perfectly. I couldn't imagine how Finn would be able to get out of the situations he did, and I love the twist up it does with who kidnapped a friend of his by just showing a smile. It was a very subtle idea for a little clue, but it worked out perfectly. How many times have I said perfectly in this whole video? I don't know. But yeah. And now it's time for number 1A. Number 1A, the other best book I read in 2016 is Seizure by Kathy Ricks, the second book in the Viral series. It goes from virals to seizure to code to exposure to terminal. But let me explain. I thought that Virals was an okay book. I ended up giving it 3 stars out of 4, even though for the first half I thought it was going to be more like a 2 or a 1.5, because, well, I'm going to say the reasons that I gave it a 3. After these characters get superpowers, it's not really much of a spoiler because, well, I mean, you'll probably read the back, but anyway, these 4 characters, Tori, Ben, Hai, and Shelton, they're like the Ninja Turtles of the Wolf Pack or something. They get these superpowers, and, well, they utilize them nice in Virals, but I was curious about how they would utilize them now that the introduction was out of the way. Seizure delivered it, well, perfectly. One problem I had was I felt like Ben, Hai, and Shelton sort of felt like the same person, but in Seizure, they all have different roles to play. They all have different personalities. I could visualize them perfectly. They almost felt like my friends, and they have different advantages with their powers. Tori has a good sniffer, Ben is a lot stronger, Hai can really see better, and Shelton can really hear better. Yeah, the booby traps, the mystery, the actual story, I really want to find out more about Anne Bonny now. It's non-stop thrills, it's non-stop adventure, it's the Viral series, even though if I don't like some of the books in this series, each of them give interesting science, interesting geography. Kathy Rakes and Brendan Rakes are really smart people, if you ask me. That or they've just done a lot of research, because Seizure especially really shows shining effort. And not only that, but on top of the adventure, there's a personal story concerning the Virals that was a lot bigger in this one than the first one. In the first one, it's a murder mystery. In this one, it's a treasure hunt, and it's a very personal kind of treasure hunt, and you really feel the countdown. But yeah, you really feel the countdown, and you really feel like you don't want these characters to go away, because during their adventure, you feel like they really develop in front of you. I also really enjoyed how Tori doesn't seem to be too scared to do something that most books and most movies shy away from, because they probably would make the story too convoluted. Here, yeah, it was just a joy to read. So Shredder and Seizure are the best books I read in 2016. So there you have it. That was a lot of fun to say. I hope you enjoyed the 2 videos overall, and soon I'll be doing my worst video list, and, well, I have about 20 other books on my TBR for 2017, and let's hope that 2017 is as good a book year as this was. And if you feel any different, or if you have other opinions about these books, then please let me know in the comments, and well, I'll see you later. Happy holidays!